Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. And we have the unfortunate news today that Cloris Leachman has passed away at the age of 94 due to natural causes. Now, I think everybody kind of knew this was inevitable. I mean, obviously, she had a very long life. She lived 94 years, so I mean, uh, you know, it wasn't as tragic as if it was somebody who was younger, but at the same time, she was still working. I mean, she still had done, I don't know if the last couple of years maybe, but I know that she was still doing projects and stuff like that. She was still acting. That's the one thing is Cloris Leachman's career in general, if you actually look at it, is so massive in the scope of time that it takes up. I think she acted in 5 or 6 different decades. Something along those lines, but I'm going to go over kind of some of the stuff that I really liked about her, and a lot of that has to do with her involvement in Mel Brooks films. But the other thing is that it's important to note that she got her career early on with other actresses like Betty White and people like that who were acting on television at the time back in the 50s and the 60s. She was on the Mary Tyler Moore Show. I think that's where she first got kind of her started her bigger roles and stuff like that. She probably met Mel Brooks around that time too, because he was a television writer at the time for the Sid Caesar Show, I believe. So they were all probably in the same circles. Again, Mel Brooks is really good friends with Dick Van Dyke too, and I believe he was an executive producer on the Mary Tyler Moore Show. Sorry, I think I said Dick Van Dyke Show actually earlier. It's not. It's the Mary Tyler Moore Show. That is what Cloris Leachman was on, along with Betty White, actually. But like I said, after that she kind of did a lot of her more serious films and stuff like that. She was in Lassie, and she also, this was at a point in her career too, at least, maybe a little bit further on than that. Probably, it was in the early 70s. She actually won her Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress for The Last Picture Show. So she, some people do forget that about Cloris Leachman, because most people just remember her as, oh, she was in all those Mel Brooks comedies, or she did all these comedies like After That. Because the later half of her career is very, very packed with comedies, even though, like I said, she was on the Mary Tyler Moore Show, so it was kind of a little bit different, where it's television comedy, but that was still comedy. So she has that that early part of her career had a lot more either not as hammy, definitely not as hammy as Mel Brooks, not as hammy comedy and more serious roles. And then she evolved into comedy, which is actually something that happens to a lot of actors in their careers. Leslie Nielsen was like that too, where he started out as a serious actor in Hollywood and then eventually found his way into comedies. And he excelled in comedies, again, a lot like Cloris Leachman did. And the first comedy I ever saw her in was Young Frankenstein, and where she plays the character of Frau Blücher. And whenever somebody has to say her name, the horses have to neigh, and thunder has to happen, and the horses have to neigh and rear up, because just the mention of her name is enough to scare the shit out of horses, no matter where they are, and no matter who is saying it. It's like a trigger word. It is one of the most hilarious parts of that movie. And the other thing is, Cloris Leachman does a very good job at physical acting as well as her comedic timing, and it's on display in Young Frankenstein from the moment we meet her, because we have that whole scene where she's actually she's leading Gene Wilder through the Frankenstein castle that she's the caretaker of, and the whole time the candelabra that she's holding does not have it's not lit. It's completely unlit, and she's just walking around this room with candles that aren't lit and pretending that they are. And there's a scene where she literally where she turns almost like a robot. She turns in such like a fluid. Her upper body is completely rigid; it doesn't move, but her hips and her lower body turn. And she looks at Gene Wilder and says that he must stay close to the candles because the staircase can be treacherous. And she delivers it in the most deadpan style possible, in the most serious way possible, while still realizing, the audience is seeing that the candles are not lit. So for her to be able to kind of just keep all that physical rigidity in that scene and to have the proper timing with the line is great for the comedy in the scene, because Gene Wilder is kind of like the audience. He's looking at her like she's insane. And that's the other thing too, is that a lot of the on-set hijinks with stuff with Young Frankenstein, some of those scenes were actually improv and stuff like that. Although I don't think Cloris Leachman was actually in the improv scene. Um, but like I said, she has a great part in that movie. She does a good job for her area, and she hams up the screen, and it's amazing every time she's on it. And then you can go to her next work with Mel Brooks, which I believe was High Anxiety. And High Anxiety, she plays she plays like a completely opposite. Well, I shouldn't say actually completely opposite, but a somewhat opposite character from what she does in Young Frankenstein. Where in High Anxiety, she's this evil person. Basically, she has this like weird BDSM Nazi fetish with Harvey Korman, but she's Nurse Diesel. She's supposed to be an offshoot of Nurse Ratched from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, because a lot of that's not actually Hitchcock, I don't think, but that a lot of the High Anxiety, the movie, is basically just, it's all a pun on Hitchcock. That's all it's a joke on. So, but he threw a One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest in there with her, and it's funny. But she does a really good job of kind of playing up that very like evil, kind of grody and weird and rigid. Like she just acts like a crazy person, and she does it so convincingly well that it's actually almost scary sometimes when you see it on screen. And there's even a very good one where it's a face shot, and basically she keeps saying, "No, you won't. No, you won't." She's saying those lines while staring into the camera, and the camera's like zooming in on her face, and you just see this crazy just coming towards you. It's almost like, again, kind of like a thing where Hitchcock did with Vertigo, where you're kind of seeing the close up of Jimmy Stewart's face. As you have the background going. They do that also with Mel Brooks. They do the joke where he's with a silhouette and all the stuff from the actual Vertigo film by Hitchcock. But like I said, Nurse Diesel, extremely good character. And then she also plays a small part in History of the World Part 1, where she's one of the leaders of the French Revolution near the final act of the film, because it does have several historical segments. And that's the last act, and she's basically kind of like one of the leaders of the French Resistance. But again, she does a very good job with all the physical comedy. There's actually a point in it where she's supposed to pretend to actually accidentally stab her boob with a knitting needle, and it lets out like air, like a balloon. So that is kind of funny, but like I said, she was very adept at the way she could present the comedy, and the way that she could act so deadpan in a scene, and then in another scene be completely goofy and scene chewing. It's an amazing thing to actually witness on screen, just because it's so good for the comedy, especially because you need that straight man in this case straight woman in a Mel Brooks film, because everybody else in a Mel Brooks film is so zany and over the top. Usually the protagonist is probably the most normal one in one of those type of films. He's supposed to be the protagonist is usually in Mel Brooks films is usually supposed to be kind of like the visual point for the audience. We see through their eyes; they're kind of like us, and then everybody else is just this insane, crazy world with all this slapstick humor and insanity going on. But again, that was something that she thrived in as an actress, and really that was kind of majority of what I knew her from. Not really too much of actually the older stuff, like the stuff she won an Oscar for, and her other work in other films like Lassie and stuff. Not as familiar with that, but like I said, still horrible to see her go. She's one of the last ones from that original Mel Brooks crew too. I think Mel might be the only one left. Mel and like Dick Van Dyke might be the only two left from like that general group of people. But like I said, sad news that she has passed. And in the comments below, put your favorite movie with Cloris Leachman, or whatever that may be, movie, television, whatever. Put it below, and say something if you want to. As usual, I do like to read your thoughts. So remember to hit the bell for notifications, hit the like button, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?